Welcome back to another episode of Life with Lamb. Today I'm here with Maddi for the second time. But the audience doesn't have to know that. Or they can. But
Yeah.
I don't know. We had a bit of a mishap at
No, I reckon they don't need to know.
Okay.
Yeah.
Fair enough. They don't know. This is our first time meeting.
Yeah.
First podcast ever.
Yeah.
How are you going? Give us a bit of a synopsis about yourself and a bit of a rundown.
Hey everyone. I'm happy to be here. Well, I guess the big first news is that I have got into a clinical psych master's program, which is really awesome and is something that I've been working towards for a while now. I applied last year as well. It's a pretty grueling process with an interview, and then they take a very small number of people into the course, but had some feedback last year that I need to get a bit more experience. So that's what I've been doing, currently volunteering at Eating Disorders Victoria and also the Anxiety Recovery Centre Victoria as well, and my day job at Lululemon as well.
And that's sort of how we know each other through Issachar and
Yes.
the Emporium and Doncaster crossover. We love it. So clinical psychology, has that always been something on your mind?
Not really. I think I've always been interested in psychology, particularly with my background in sport. I've always found it really interesting how different people deal with like the stresses of sport and then performing as well. So I did gymnastics, so it's a very like on the spot, 30 seconds like time to shine type of thing. So it's not like you've got a whole basketball game where you can like miss a couple of like shots and then get another turn. It's like you've got 1 minute to balance on a 10 centimetre wide beam. So I've always been really interested in how the differences of how people train, and then when they may come to the competition and like maybe how nerves affect you. I feel like it's a very like mental sport, more so than physical, especially when you're at a higher level. So I've always been interested in that side of things, and then in the last few years I've kind of become more interested in mental health in general and mental people's like well-being. And then through my undergrad and through courses, I've just become more and more interested in it, and feel like it's something that I want to do.
Amazing. And clinical psychology, it's very specific. It's not your typical psychology. Can you give the listeners a bit of background about what it is and what it entails?
Yeah, so there's a couple of different fields of psychology that you can go into. There's like sports psychology, there's health psychology, educational development, so we're working mostly with young people. But then there's clinical psychology. So that's kind of, I would say maybe the highest tier of psychology, dealing with the most kind of progressive cases and illnesses. So it's sort of like anxiety, schizophrenia, depression, those types of things is what a clinical psychologist would deal with. And it's all about like the assessment and then also like the treatment and the psychoanalysis part of it as well.
Amazing. Look, I had in the sheet that we had previously, like, you're still looking for occupation and everything, but you finally got into your dream, I guess, master's degree.
Yes.
Where are you hoping to take that?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know at the moment. I've got a lot of interests, and there's a lot of things that I haven't had any exposure to or any experience in. I mean, I'm pretty interested in working with eating disorders, which I've been doing a bit on this in this volunteer role. But there's so many things, I think, that when I do get the masters and we'll do the placements and things, I'll sort of figure out what things I'm more drawn to and maybe what I'm good at as well. So I'm really just open to what's out there.
Yeah, amazing. Is there any relation to the eating disorders? Is there a reason why you picked it in particular?
I mean, I have had exposure with that through gymnastics. It's a pretty grueling sport, and particularly has a lot of emphasis on the way you look and present. So that is something that was like, disordered eating was pretty normalised in the environment of gymnastics and maybe other elite sports as well. So I felt like I did have a bit of a personal connection with that.
Yeah, and I guess like why not sports psychology, and why the clinical route instead?
Yeah, I mean that is a good question. I did think about sports psych for a long time, but I don't know. I didn't want to pigeonhole myself into one specific thing. I can always work with athletes from a clinical perspective, and my background in sport gives me that opportunity to relate to them. But if I was just to do sports psych, then I'd have to be really focused on only athletes and only that performance side of things. Whereas I don't want that, and I don't want to just do something because I'm comfortable in it. I feel like clinical psych and that would be more of a challenge and more broader and wider reaching than just being in the sports space.
Yeah, I love that. And I think it's awesome that you're not trying to pigeonhole yourself and taking that challenge, because I think people can become really specialised in certain areas, and it's really important to sort of diversify. And I don't know, in our generation, it's like we're not going to have one job and in the one sort of faculty or in one certain domain for the rest of our lives. Like, we're always changing and like chopping into different occupations and everything. So I think that's awesome. With your gymnastics and everything, is that growing up, was that always something that you pursued? Were you more academic, or was gymnastics your sole focus?
Yeah. So I started gym when I was like 6.5. After going to my cousin's birthday party, I loved it. It was at a gym, and I just kept begging my parents to take me to a gym class, and sort of started out just having fun, and then the local class that I was at kind of saw some potential in me and recommended that I go trial at the High Performance Centre in Victoria. Had a trial there, got into the program there when I was about 7, and that was like more of the elite stream. Most people that were training there would be, their main goals would be Olympics, Commonwealth Games, Worlds. That's kind of the environment that it was. And, I started training, 10 hours, 12 hours, next went up to 20 hours, 28 hours, and then finally 32 hours a week.
How old were you?
Probably when I started 32, maybe like 10.
Wow.
Yeah, maybe 12.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
That's like a full-time job.
Yeah, plus like normal school and stuff.
Yeah, what?
So yeah, pretty intense from a pretty young age, which is kind of needed with gymnastics, kind of not. That's a whole different story. But I think I just always did it because I loved it and I liked the challenge, and then I was also pretty good at it. And there's a lot of people that sort of came through the sport who started out young as well, like myself, and went up the levels but then didn't quite make it to the top tier. I mean, it's not for everyone. It's very difficult and competitive. So I don't know. I always just really liked it. There was only a couple of times in my career where I didn't want to go to training, and I didn't love it. So I don't know. I just kind of fell into it and then just kept going with it.
Yeah, amazing. I guess at one point, I know other people saw sort of the potential in yourself, but at what point were you like, hey, this is something that I'm really good at and could probably get into? Yeah,
I think when I was younger, I was doing dancing and ballet and other things as well, which I was also I quite enjoyed. Then at about 10, I had to make the decision of whether to pick one, basically, because they wanted me to train more hours or have a sole focus. I think at that point I had to choose which one I liked more and maybe which one I felt I was better at. So maybe that's why I decided to choose gymnastics. But I guess when I probably represented my first state team was when I was like, oh yeah, probably pretty good at this. Could probably keep doing it.
Made it to the state team. We love that. Amazing. And I guess you talk about how it's a really grueling process and you go from a very young age. Can you talk to us a bit more about what it's like to be in the gymnastics environment as a young kid?
Yeah. It's a tricky one because there is an aspect of you do need to work really hard and you do need to have discipline in a lot of sort of these parameters, but at the same time it does feel like a lot of your life has been stripped away and it's just the sole focus is sport, is gymnastics. And that is difficult. I do feel like I wasn't socialised in a normal kind of way because I was not at school very often, coming back and forth from gym, from school, and the friends that I had didn't always understand why I was training so much and why I cared so much about gymnastics. And just, I've got a lot of great things that I can say about my like development and character as a person that I've learned from being in gymnastics and elite sport, but it's a tough environment, and like people expect a lot from you, and the coaches do expect a lot and may not create the best environment in terms of like your well-being all the time. So that's been difficult. Even as an adult in the sport, I sometimes didn't even feel like an adult. I didn't feel like I was cared for as a person. It was mostly just, oh, you're a score, you're a routine, you're a gymnast, and that was like all. So it doesn't always really align with the person as a person and like their well-being, unfortunately.
Yeah, so would you say that, I guess, who you are as a person is totally thrown out the window, and it's just like, what can you do? What can you provide to this team?
Yeah, a lot of the time I feel like that has been my experience and the experience of a lot of people around me, which is hard.
Yeah, it sounds really, I mean, it sounds really grueling, but I guess, like, yeah, it is an elite sport at the end of the day, and I have heard some pretty hard stories from other sporting pathways about how, I guess, once you reach the top, you're drilled to the point where a lot of people just give up and let it go. Can you talk to me a bit about all the sacrifices that you had to make for yourself and also your family as well? Because I guess, yeah, friends not understanding why you're putting so much effort into, I guess, this sport when you could be out playing or hanging out with them.
Yeah, I mean, there's obviously a lot of like social sacrifices, and just like, you know, couldn't go and hang out with anyone after school because I got to go to training and like be training every Saturday morning, and like the only day off I ever had was Sundays. So, but you know, my parents were really supportive, and they tried their best to make sure I did have like social connections, and I'm not saying I was isolated or anything like that, but it was harder. Absolutely. And like I'm really great friends with all of the girls I trained with. But yeah, my parents made a really big effort to, you know, if there was a party or like something that I could go to, they'd drive me there, pick me up, like that sort of thing. And, you know, have really good family friends as well that we would catch up with. My sister's really sporty as well. She's played like high level netball and basketball. Was a good swimmer for a while. So we would all like go to each other's like competitions and games and stuff. So very like supportive of like our sport endeavours, but not in like a pressuring way, more just like we're here for you, like at each different place.
Yeah, I love that. Okay, describe a typical day for you, because it just sounds so hectic, and at such a young age I don't know how you're able to cope, but let's talk to us a bit about that.
Yeah, from, you know, grade 4 probably, I moved schools to go to a primary school that was closer to the gym, so that my parents didn't have to keep driving back and forth from Williamstown, because I trained in Paran, and the coaches would walk us to training and to school. So yeah, from then I would, you know, train from 7 till 10:15 in the morning, either get a little van to school or walk to school when I was in primary school, go to school until 3 o'clock, and then train from 3:30 to 6:40, and then have dinner in the car on the way home, probably do my homework when I got home, and then go to bed. That was 3 days a week, and then a couple of other days was like wake up normal time, go to school, and then leave at like lunchtime, so like 1 o'clock, and train till 5, then, you know, have physio, massage, like all those types of things afterwards, and then go home.
Jeez, that's truly the experience. What were teachers like? Because you can imagine, oh gosh, Maddie's like leaving class.
Yeah.
Or, oh gosh, Maddie's gone to do this.
Yeah, luckily, this like high school that I went to as well, like we had a partnership with the gym, so they knew the gymnasts would have to leave at certain times, and they were really good at trying to make our schedules so we could always be there for like the core classes. Like I didn't have to do like wood tech or food tech or other things that maybe weren't a priority at that time, so that I could make sure that I was going to my maths, my English and chemistry, like that sort of stuff. But I think as well, like it was really up to me to have like ownership and accountability for my studies. Like I wanted to do well in school. as well. So it just came with the territory. Like it would have been very easy for me to like fall behind, but I always would like go up to them if I had to, because I would go on trips for weeks at a time as well, like competing or training. So I would always be like, oh, I'm leaving for the week. Like, what's the stuff I'm going to miss out on? Like, make sure I wasn't missing any tests or anything like that. So I definitely learned a lot of that accountability and like ownership over what I was doing from that experience.
Yeah, that's amazing. And at such a young age to be able to take, I guess, accountability and ownership over your own studies instead of dropping everything and saying, well, I'm a gymnast. Like, this is what's going on for me. I guess in the back of your head, did you know that your education was still at the forefront, or?
Yeah, I do think so, because like you can't really make very much money doing gymnastics. Like the lifespan of a gymnast is pretty short, and the funding and the like wow factor, the like audience engagement is not there very often. So like have these big superstars that were going to get sponsorships and deals and money from being a gymnast, and I think I knew that, and I like knew that gymnastics is going to end at some point, so I do need to make sure that I've got like my schooling and something else that I can do.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, that just sounds amazing, and I feel like that's so mature of you. At such a young age, I would have been like, oh, fuck this. I'm just gonna go pursue gym and everything, and just drop education. Well, not really.
Yeah.
Sorry, mum and dad. I love that so much. Do you feel like your parents are a good driving force for that, or did you find that your accountability sort of just came up naturally?
Yeah, I think like, definitely my parents would have had an input in that. I mean, I'm sitting here talking about it as a 25-year-old, like in a coherent way. Like as a kid, I probably wasn't as, dedicated to the school side of things, but definitely when I was in high school, I like understood all of that. And yeah, definitely. I mean, when I was doing elite gymnastics, like school was not really a priority for like the coaches in the gym. But when I went over to college, I was a student athlete. So student always comes before athlete. And, if there was one class you had to take, then you had to go to that class and you had to find a different time for training. And there was a lot of like academic support and to try and make sure that, you stay on top of your grades. Because in all of the sports, there's like a GPA that you have to get to be able to even like compete and like be on the team. So they really make sure that the student is first and then the athlete.
Talk to us about the college experience. You headed over to America and competed at a pretty high level still, but was immersed and thankfully, unfortunately enough, in the student athlete scene. How was that?
Yeah, I mean, it was incredible. So I went to the University of Arizona, which is a D1 college, and it was probably the best thing I could have done for myself. I decided to go to college. Like a lot of people in America, they'll be like, this is what I'm working towards, like most of your life, like kind of thing. But I just kind of felt like I didn't want to do gymnastics anymore in Australia. I was at a point where I was like really burned out, like physically and emotionally. Had a kind of bad competition experience, and just felt like really drained. And that was at a point where I was like, I don't really like doing this anymore. I don't feel like this is fun for me, and that's the only reason I ever did gym. So I decided to, pursue college gymnastics. And the first year there was like, it was hard because I was still in that bit of like, I don't really even know if I really like this headspace. But after that year, I was like, no, wait, this is exactly what I want to do. And the college environment is quite different. It's a very team-oriented environment, and they force you to like balance your social life and your academics and your sport, and it's all on a similar sort of tier. Like obviously, athletics always is going to be a priority, and you have to make sure you're doing the right things on the weekend to be able to train and compete. But I was able to actually like branch out and feel like a complete person and have a bit more balance in my life than just having the sport. And yeah, it was probably the best thing I could have done for myself. I learned a lot about myself as a person, and I really felt like I could kind of grow into who I was. And then, you know, the facilities, the experience is like, it's just amazing. They have so, like, I was in a college town, so all the fans, all the people who lived in the town, like, they just love college sport. Like, doesn't matter what sport you're doing, they just love Arizona everything. And that was really, really cool to be a part of. And I think going to college was the first time I kind of felt like accepted as an athlete, because people were like, oh my God, like, you're a student athlete, like, that's amazing. Like, could recognize all of the sacrifices and recognize how much, like, how hard it is to get there. Whereas I didn't feel that was celebrated as much here in my experience. I always felt like, oh, you're a weird girl that does gym. Like,
yeah. Oh gosh, there's so much to unpack in that whole segment. I love that you went on a tangent. That's awesome. I want to ask, I guess, where did the opportunity come from? And in Australia, I can totally relate to how people might look down on certain passion projects or commitments that you might have that might be a bit sort of rogue to what they might be used to. And there are those people that give those snarky remarks and dish out the negativity, which is so, like, it's probably the worst thing in Australia. I don't think anyone is 100% supportive of one another because we're all just trying to, like, get on top of each other, whereas it sounds like in America it's awesome. But
yeah, I mean, at least in that aspect.
In that aspect, yeah, I know there are other things, but we're going to keep this politically correct, everybody. I wanted to ask, like, where did the opportunity come from, and how did it all come about?
Yeah, so I went to Worlds in 2015 with the Australian gymnastics team. And it was the exact same time that I was doing my Year 12 exam. So I literally did my English exam and maths exam in Glasgow, Scotland, whilst competing at the highest level I've ever competed at.
So, as you do.
Yeah. So is that, like, you can imagine the stress that I was under in that time. And, you know, we didn't perform very well at the competition. I still had these exams to do. Like, we were still kind of training a lot. And I just started to, like, get mental blocks, just start crying in the gym, which I never usually would do. And I just felt so, like, drained as a person that I came back from that and I was like, I came back to Australia, like, after that, and I was like, what am I doing? Like, I don't even like this right now. I was struggling with these, like, mental blocks of these skills, and it was just, like, a hard time. And then this opportunity sort of came up where a coach, a different coach of mine, was like, oh, we've got, I know this person at Stanford who is looking for an all-round gymnast to come on their team. And I was like, you know what, like I've watched a couple college meets, like, it seems really fun, like, I want a change, like, I think I need to do something different here, otherwise I'm just going to get stuck in this hole. And so I went through the whole process, like, reached out to them, went through the whole application process with Stanford. And to get into Stanford, you have to get in academically before you can be accepted as an athlete there, which, as you can imagine, is very, very difficult to do. So I went through a long process with them and then didn't get in. And they were like, oh, we've just got our assistant coach here has just become the head coach at Arizona. Do you want us to put you in touch? And I was like, yeah, cool. Like, I'll chat to them. And like, within 2 weeks of talking to them, they're like, we've got a spot for you here, like, do you want to come? I've, like, never heard of Arizona before, but yeah, sure. Like, I just wanted to take that leap and, like, to do that because I just felt very stuck in, like, what I was doing.
Yeah, how beneficial is it, in your opinion, to have a change of scenery, whether it be, like, I guess gymnastics in your instance, but maybe in a workplace or I guess in social groups, even if you have friends that are sort of putting you down, how important is it to just, I guess, leave them or change your scenery?
I think it's, like, super important because if you're just stuck in that same environment, like, a lot of our, you know, behaviours and like the way we feel is very dependent on the environment that we're in. So I feel if you're not in an environment that's building you up and making you feel good, then it might be time to change. Otherwise you probably just get stuck, and that's kind of like how I was feeling. And like, it was a crazy thing to do is move across the other side of the world, but even a smaller change, like, would still probably have helped me kind of get out of that space that I was in. So I think like I can't speak highly enough of, you know, jumping outside of your comfort zone, taking on a challenge, doing something new. I think, you know, you learn so much about yourself as a person, like, and you always just, you grow with that. And like usually it's pretty fun.
Yeah, 100%. Especially when you've fallen out of love with something that you
absolutely
truly had a passion and a love and a drive for as well. I think from what I can hear, gymnastics was something that you really had fun in. And for you to get to a point where you started questioning whether you loved the sport anymore, or you sort of regretted or had sort of, I don't know, resentment towards the sport,
absolutely,
is a telltale sign for you to maybe get out of there.
Yeah. And I went to college and I I fell back in love with the sport. Like it really repaired my relationship with gymnastics. And like it was just a completely different environment. It was like just the best thing I could have done, because if I didn't do that, like I probably couldn't see my experience as a gymnast in a particularly positive light, because it may have ended not so positive. But now that I've gone away, like went to college and sort of finished things on my own terms in like a positive way, I can sit here and be like, I would do it again.
Yeah, I love that. In what ways did college repair the relationship, do you think?
I think it just allowed me to like be an individual person, and like allow me to have different interests even, and different aspects of my personality and my life that were all like kind of balanced as one. And then like it was a team environment, like in Australia or in elite gymnastics, it's quite individualized. At least it was when I was doing it. It's starting to change a little bit now. But it was very individual, super like very competitive, and like you just couldn't really have much fun. It was very serious and like can't show much emotion, that kind of thing. But then college is like, it's so team oriented. You like can run around and scream and jump and clap and cheer for your like teammates and your friends, and like it's just, it appreciates like people's individualities a bit more, and I feel like that's really like what I needed.
Yeah, and I think with the elite sporting industry, especially like gymnastics and I guess swimming is another thing that I can sort of relate to. A lot of it is very individualized, and it sort of takes away from the actual person. It's like, what can you do?
Yeah.
How are you going to best perform? That's all that matters. It's not like how are you feeling or what else excites you other than, I guess, gymnastics. And it's great to see that the college environment sort of nurtured that and made sure that you had balance. You were talking about how you had to go to certain classes, or I remember in our other podcast when you were saying how they allocated specific times or like put a time limit on when you were training. Is that a thing that they did? Yeah, like what measures did they do or did they have or implement that helped you live your balanced life, and something that you might have been missing in Australia?
Yeah, so the NCAA rules is you can only train 20 hours a week. So that's like a whole 12 hours that I just got back there, at least. And so it's mostly so that everybody's on like an even playing field, and so that like you do have other time to like focus on your studies and have other interests and other things that you do. So that's definitely one thing that was really good. And then I think having a good sort of coach-athlete relationship was really helpful as well. Like I started to have a bit more autonomy in what I was doing. And it's like if I came to, like I was pretty beaten up and injured and everything from doing a long stint in elite gymnastics with probably not as much rest and recovery as somebody should need. So I couldn't train as much as as much as other people on my team because I was in pain a lot. So I would be like to my coach, I don't think I can do this today, but I'll be I'm confident in myself to be able to compete on the weekend, and like he trusted me in that. And we had a pretty good relationship in that sense. Like, yes, he would push me when I needed to be pushed, and I wasn't like trying to get out of anything. I was sort of like, my body needs to be right for me to be able to compete on the weekend. and, you know, probably doing this 1 or 10 extra volts today is not really going to change what I'm going to do on the weekend. Like, as long as I feel good in myself and I'm, like, confident in what I can do, then, you know, I'll be right for the weekend. So
press record again. And I think as an athlete, you know what, I guess, your body needs.
Yeah.
And as coaches out there, and I think it's getting a lot better, but very much back in the old days, I hear how rigid and old-fashioned.
It's like this one-size-fits-all approach.
Yeah.
It's like not everybody's the same.
No,
like,
not at all.
We've all got these different issues and like body types and like body construction. Like, I'm not going to be able to do the same amount of things as somebody else who looks different to me. Like, it's really common sense.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, not everyone can see it, but you know, it is common sense at the end of the day.
Yeah. And I definitely wouldn't have been able to do that as a young gymnast. Like, there is a need for like some rules and rigidity when you're learning. But as an adult, like, I should be able to, you know, say what's best for me.
Exactly. I love that. Did you resent, I guess, not gymnastics, but more gymnastics in Australia after your experience in America?
I think the main thing that I wanted was I didn't want some people, like, I didn't want people to like go through what I had to and like what a lot of the people around me had to go through. And I think I was like, there's a better way to do this. I've seen it, I've done it. And like, I didn't really resent it because I kind of like had gotten over it by then. Like, I didn't want to go like back into to that environment. And like, I mean, there was an independent review into Gymnastics Australia in the last couple of years, which I did participate in.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
What was that experience like?
Yeah, it was hard. Like, I don't know if you've watched Athlete A or if any of the listeners have, but you know, that it's a documentary on Netflix around the USA gymnastics team, and it gives you a bit of an insight into the culture of elite gymnastics at the time, and you know, that really sparked a lot of different movements in other countries as well, to be like, oh wait, like maybe like this coaching environment or this environment like is not super helpful for me, and you know, maybe I was not treated like the best in this way, and it really started to get people to like think of like all these things had just been normalized for so long, and you're kind of told that, you know, or even it's just, you know, known that, you know, oh, like if you do this, like this is what I must have to do to be the best. This is what I must have to do to get to the Olympics. Like, it was everything in the environment was just like framed around that. It's like, yeah, you have to make this sacrifice. You have to do all this stuff. But in the scheme of things, like, probably not. Like,
yeah, 100%. And I think hindsight is such a powerful thing. And it's probably a lot of people's biggest regret as well. Like, hindsight is just very, I don't know, clarifies a lot of things.
Yeah.
And when you look back on things, you sort of look back and you're like, hey, like, why was I doing that? Or what let someone else tell me that was the right thing to do at the time? And yeah, it can be quite a daunting thing.
Yeah, and so I think like going to college and repairing that relationship put me in a good position to participate in this review, because I wasn't blaming anyone in particular. I wasn't blaming like anything. Like, it was really just about like, how can we make this better for the people in the future? Because it doesn't have to be like that. Like, it doesn't have to be that damaging. Because like, I know a lot of people who have come out of the sport and they have like mental health issues. Like, there's a lot of things that have been damaging to a person as a result, majority from that environment, you know.
And all because of a sport.
Yeah.
As well, and which is something that people do to enjoy and have fun, like yourself.
There's so many good things that can come from being a sports person. Like, there's a lot of great characteristics and traits and things that you learn from being in sports. Like, it's a great thing, but at some point it just kind of has become maybe not so much of a great thing, and it doesn't have to be like that.
Yeah. From your perspective, do you have any advice or a message for potentially those that are a bit younger growing up right now into the elite sporting industry? Do you have any advice or pointers or pearls of wisdom that you'd like to give, especially coming from such a what was a really grueling industry?
Yeah, I think there's a lot of people working really hard right now to change the way that elite sport is run. A lot of people have shared their experiences, have talked to people, and there is like hope for change. So I think that's the first thing to kind of recognise. I don't know. I think it's really important to not let your sport be your identity or attached to your self-worth. And I think that goes for in a lot of different things. Like, I mean, if you're a doctor or a lawyer or whatever, like that can sometimes become your entire identity. And then maybe if something happens and you don't end up doing that or whatever, like you don't want to be stripped of your whole person just because you're not doing something. Like gymnastics, a sport is something that you do, not something that you are. And I think that distinction is really important for the athlete to know, because a lot of the maybe outside factors might tell you the opposite, but you need to be very strict with yourself to know that, this is just something that I do, not something that I am. And, making sure that you stand up for yourself as a person rather than just seeing yourself as an athlete.
Yeah, I love that so much. That's awesome. I was thinking, would you recommend this lifestyle? Looking back at it all.
Would I recommend it?
Would you recommend it?
To who?
I guess say in the future, I don't know if you want to have kids or not, or raise a family, and your kids, I guess, hear your story about gymnastics and how you got to the top and were able to compete at Worlds in something that you love doing, and they were like, Mum, I really want to pursue it. Would you recommend it to your kids?
Yeah, that's a hard question for me to answer. I think at the moment, probably not. But in a few years, maybe. I would just want to make sure, they're doing it because they love it. And, I would be supportive if, my kid wanted to do that. There's a lot of really great things that can come from being an elite sports person. I attribute a lot of my, personal characteristics, and, they're going to help me for the rest of my life. And I would do it again. I would, because I've learned a lot about myself and who I am through the whole process, good and bad. So I don't know if I'd recommend it necessarily, but I'd support it, and I would make sure that they wouldn't have to necessarily go through the same things that I did. That's all I care about.
Yeah, exactly. I love that so much. And I guess it ties in really nicely how you talk about how you attribute all the traits and personality traits that you got from gymnastics, and it wasn't gymnastics made this. It was I received these from actually competing and doing gymnastics. I was able to be accountable and responsible and take ownership of my own education while balancing your limited but small instances of a social life as well. And I love that so much. I really do. That's awesome. And with the negative aspect of it, what was the worst of it? You did talk about your eating disorder, and that's why you're volunteering at the moment to bring awareness to it. Was that the worst of it, or was it injuries or coaches? Can you talk to me a bit about that if you don't mind?
I think the worst thing about it would be the normalization of a lot of maladaptive coping behaviors, and particularly disordered eating practices. A lot of the people I was around, and myself included, did not have a good relationship with food, and we didn't really see it as a fuel or something that was good for you. It was always this negative, scary thing, and that's quite damaging going out into the world after that. That's what you've kind of learned. I think like injuries are really hard. Like I've had a lot of injuries. Like I ended my career on a Achilles tear. So that.
Wait, talk to us about that. How did that all come about?
So I've had like when I was in college, like I had a lot of Achilles tendonitis and like sort of managing it for a while, and then the last competition that I was doing in McHale, which is like our home gym in Arizona, senior night, like all the hoo-ha, it was great. And then like I did a couple of, like I did a vault, I did bars, and then I was warming up to do my floor routine. And then I just took off and like my whole Achilles just like ruptured, and I didn't like finish my jump properly and then landed on my hands and knees. And my coach came over to me and he's like, what's going on? I'm like, oh, it's gone. Like my Achilles is gone. It's not attached anymore. Like I knew exactly straight away. Like it was like my biggest fear because I had Achilles like soreness, but I also knew that it was quite likely to happen. Like it was this weird sort of like I know this could definitely happen anytime, but I really am so scared of it. And
that is the weirdest feeling.
Yeah.
I hate that feeling so much when you know something's going to happen, but you just don't want it to happen.
Yeah,
so you ended on an injury.
Yes, I did. But the thing is, like, my career was coming to an end anyway. Like, I was pretty prepared for that, which I'm very lucky that I was ready for the ending. My body was breaking anyway. I mean, it wasn't ideal, obviously, because the recovery is, like, it's pretty shit. Like, I was in a cast for a while, a boot, this, that, couldn't walk for ages, like, you have to reteach yourself how to run and walk and all of this type of stuff. And then it was at the exact same time, like a week later, like COVID happened and like everything shut down, all the sports were cancelled, like everything was crazy, and I was just like stuck in America for a bit. But that's another story.
I love that. That's like almost perfect timing as well.
Yeah, it actually was kind of good because then I didn't really miss out on anything.
Yeah, it's true.
Like, so the whole season ended for everyone, not just me at that time. So that was kind of like a little silver lining. But yeah, if that had have happened at a different time, I don't know how I would feel about it. But I weirdly have some closure.
Yeah,
I weirdly have some closure.
Exactly, we love closure. We love that.
Yeah.
But were there any injuries, I guess, when you were a bit younger that you sustained and you thought, oh my God, like everyone's going to overtake me and everyone's going to surpass me? And what was that feeling like and how did you overcome that?
Yeah, that's a good question. I mean, in like 2014, I had this like really bad stress fracture in my foot. Like, so from overuse, really. And I trained on it quite a lot after I knew that it was not great. Because it was the Commonwealth Games year, I really wanted to go to the Commonwealth Games, is the main reason why. And, like, I couldn't even walk properly. I was in a lot of pain. Like, that's probably the most pain. Like, my Achilles was nothing compared to that. The most pain that I've been in. And I was just kept training, which was probably not a good idea. But, like, I just felt I did, and, like, the people around me felt that, you know, I don't know. There was a bigger goal, which was the Com Games, even though I couldn't even walk. So I, like, competed in the nationals. Like, I did well, but then wasn't selected for this team. So I was like, okay, I'll go get my foot checked out. Had to have a surgery, and it was in my navicular bone, which is like a small bone on top of your foot. It doesn't have very much blood flow that gets to it, so it's quite difficult to heal. So I had to have surgery, put like a little screw in it. She's still going strong in there.
Oh, is she?
Yeah.
Do you need pair AirPods?
No, I don't. It's not big enough. It's pretty small, I think. But yeah, so I had to have this screw put in. And that recovery was quite long as well. Like, I lost a lot of my, like, muscle on my leg because you have to just, like, you can't walk, you can't use it, you can't really strengthen it because it's in a cast, and, you, like, there's a lot of movements that you need to do to, like, strengthen, like, particularly your calf. So, like, my whole calf was, like, little skin and bones. And it was really hard to, like, build up that muscle again, and even just to, like, trust myself to do things properly, because for a long time before I was in pain, so I was like changing the way that I was jumping and doing my skills and running and stuff because I didn't want it to hurt as much.
That's right. Oh, that's true, because you would have found like a different way to negate the
Yeah.
pain. Yeah. Oh, how weird is the body?
Yeah, crazy.
It's so crazy.
So I had to teach myself to like jump properly and use both of my feet and legs properly again when I started, like when I was able to like get back into things. Like my instinct was just to like protect this foot, and I'm like, no, it's fine. Like you're allowed to do that. Like it's all good. Like you're strong enough. It doesn't hurt anymore. Like it doesn't hurt. Like you got it. So like that whole part was hard. And then obviously I wanted to go to the Com Games, and like I wasn't on the team, so I had to sort of watch all that happen. And there was a World Championships that year as well, and I did feel like I was getting left behind 100%. Because the year before that, like I was one of the top seniors in Australia, and like I was kind of like getting up there, and like that these next 2 years would probably be my big 2 years, and I've had this injury for it's like taken 6 months to heal kind of thing. Like it was a really long process, and it was really hard. But I think I was just like, I needed to get better. Like I've got no option to just sit here and feel sorry. Like I did so much rehab, like worked really hard to like get my muscle back, get everything feeling okay. I did a lot of bars in that time, so got better at bars, which was good. And then I don't know, like a year later I was at the World Championships. So, I don't even really have any advice.
Yeah, well, I think what I can take away from that is, yes, you might be injured like on the foot.
Yeah.
Or it might be a knee injury. I know my brother has a knee injury at the moment, so hopefully he listens to that little segment. But it sounds like there's always light at the end of the tunnel. Like you missed Commonwealth, and like that's horrible. But then you made Worlds literally. How long after? The year after?
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And opportunities still come and go, and they come and then they go again. And the fact that you also took initiative to get better at bars, which I don't know if it was lacking or not, but you had the opportunity to get better at something else, and being able to see the bright side of maybe a really shit injury that you can't really control is, I think, probably one of the most important lessons that you could have learned as an athlete as well. And even when it isn't an injury as well, if something's not going right at work, but then you work on it, or you work on something else on the side and get better at that, sometimes opportunities come that way as well. And I think that's such an amazing message that you put out, even if you didn't think it was advice or not.
Yeah, I think it's really, like, when you're in the moment, like, you might feel stuck and you might feel really shitty, but it is important to, like, remember that you're not going to be in that place forever. Like, you're not going to be in that really shitty moment forever. And as you said, there's opportunities, like, they come and go. And it might feel bad at the time. I mean, it's really hard to, to feel it.
It's a lot easier said than done.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying like, oh, don't be upset. Just like go straight into it. Of course, you have to have your grieving period and
absolutely.
And I guess reflect on the injury and everything. But just know that there's I guess a bright side at the end of everything, which is awesome. Was that the height of it? Like injuries?
Yeah.
Yeah. Lots of niggles.
Yeah, lots. All the time.
Yeah.
Like I had 2 physio appointments a week, 1 massage a week, like everything.
Just being like fine-tuned the whole time.
Yeah, that's what I needed it.
Yeah, exactly. I can imagine. All right. And then with the clinical psychology, are you trying to marry it up upon reflection for your gymnastics career, or not really? Are you just sort of seeing it as like clinical psychology, I just want to take it as something that I'm now passionate and like in love with?
Yeah, I think yes and no. Because I do want to step out of the sport world. Like it's been such a big part of my life, and I've loved it, but I don't want to be in there forever. So I think that's another reason why I want to do clinical psych, is to kind of like, break away a little bit. But at the same time, I've seen so many people like go through the transition of being an athlete into like the normal kind of world and struggle with clinical mental health issues, like whether that's like disordered eating, whether that's like anxiety and like perfectionism type traits that have been like forced upon you by coaches or parents or people, and that you've brought them out into this body. You don't really have much self-worth, like you don't have much concept because you've just been this gymnast or this athlete this entire time. And that's got nothing to do with like sport or performance. Like that's like something completely different. That's more clinical. That's clinical health, like mental health right there, like those types of issues. So in a sense, like that's why I want to be a clinical psychologist, is those little bits in there that's like, so even if it's not a sport, that's like you've kind of got these types of thoughts from, like, you know, that can come from having some sort of trauma, from, I don't know, being in a very high performing school or uni. Like lots of people are super duper stressed right now, like just in the state of the world, like they just are. And I think any type of heightened environments, like you're going to have experiences that make you think and feel a certain way. So unpacking, and that they present in, you know, anxiety or depression or whatever it is, but it's got to do with like that other section of what has kind of happened to make you feel like that, and how can we work through and cope with those things and maybe unlearn some of those like unhelpful thoughts and behaviors.
Yeah, amazing. Psychology is so interesting.
Yeah, it's cool.
I think
it's so cool.
Yeah, it is very cool, and how the brain works and all the different avenues that it takes from, like you said, trauma or being an elite athlete, or even just uni.
Mm-hmm.
Like, so many people are so stressed, like you said, and how the brain copes with that, and the certain behaviors that we demonstrate because of it is really interesting. So yeah, oh my gosh, psychology.
There's a lot to unpack.
There is a lot to unpack. I'm not going to delve into that.
I could talk about that for another 2 hours if you want.
Next episode. Another one. I had some questions from the listeners.
Yeah.
Being an elite or ex-elite athlete or gymnast that you were. We got some tips and pointers. How to get better at body weight exercises.
So that one, I mean, there's a lot of repetition that's involved in that one. Your body weight exercises, I mean, they really just come from doing them a lot, and then, you know, maybe challenging yourself to go harder than what you want to do. So like a handstand, like that's like a simple gymnastics thing for me, because I've done, you know, releases and flips and like all of this stuff after it. So it's like now that's something that's comes really naturally because I've pushed my muscles to a limit that's higher than it. So I think like if you want to do something like maybe you know, push past it, even if you can't do the full thing, you're going to push past it, and then like the thing you're actually wanting to do is going to be a bit easier. And the thing with like bodyweight exercise, it's like all these tiny little muscles that you have to kind of build and train. Like it's so much strength involved in like doing a bodyweight exercise.
Yeah, I think the repetition thing were obviously speaks very true, and that's with anything. If you repeat it over and over, you're going to get better. I love the point with variation or going past sort of like you have your variation 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and then you take, I guess, maybe 2 in front, and then you'll fall back.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think that's really cool and a very good point as well.
Yeah, I don't know, like I haven't really tried it in practice, but I mean it makes sense.
Yeah, just send it. Just send it, and hopefully you just fall back and don't do a handstand or something. I love that. Ring muscle ups. How do we unpack that one?
How do we do those? I mean, that's it's just strength and trying it. I think like a lot of people won't try things because they're afraid they'll like fail at it, or like won't be able to just do it. But the more times you're like trying to do it, like the actual full movement, like the better you'll get and the closer you'll get to doing it. Obviously there's progressions involved with, you know, like learning a skill like that. So you should probably be able to do like other ring things, like chin-ups, like muscle-ups on a normal bar. The thing...
Would you say a bar muscle-up's easier than a ring?
Yeah.
A lot easier?
I think so, yeah. I mean, I never did rings, so I'm not 100% sure. But, yes.
In short, yes. Yes. Awesome. And handstands. Would you say that's like a forte of yours? What was your favourite movement?
Well, my favourite...
or event?
Yeah. That's too hard. It changed all the time. Like most, like floor is always like going to be one of my favorites because it's like a bit more of a performance and it's a bit like fun. You get music and dance and stuff.
Yeah, that's true because it's your own your own little theatric.
Yeah.
30 seconds.
Yeah. But I always really liked bars as well. after I became better at it when I had all these foot injuries.
True. Would you say, what would you say is your favourite like learnt skill that took like a really long time for you to finally get down?
Oh, I don't know. I mean, they all have weird names. So
You describe it.
like I've really loved learning like releases on bars. So like going from one bar to the other bar, like flipping in between it.
Oh right.
Yeah.
I've seen that before.
Yeah.
I've seen people like grab it with their like forearms because they missed it.
Oh yeah, that happened recently at the World Championships actually.
Oh, I think I literally saw that. I saw
Yeah.
that video. It was actually awesome. It was so cool.
Yeah.
And to have the strength to just grip with the forearm.
I mean, that's crazy.
Against gravity and obviously the momentum.
Yeah,
that you're
exactly.
swinging at. Yeah.
But I mean, you're not trying to do
Yeah,
that.
no, I'm trying to, obviously, but
But you can.
You can
if
do.
you're strong enough.
Exactly. My powerlifting coach, who also did gymnastics for 10 years, asked if you ever got to lay out Tsukahara with 2/1 twists. I don't know what that means. But he wants to know.
Yeah. So the Sukahara double, I mean, I didn't do that because I did a different type of vault, which is the Yuchenko. So all of the skills like named after the first person
Who like
did
it.
them.
Yeah, that's pretty sick.
And then, you know, if there's twists or other turns and stuff, like you just call it a full twist or a half twist or whatever. So I did a different type of vault to that, and I tried to do a Yuchenko. In college I did a Yuchenko 1.5, but a double I could never quite like get. We trained a lot. We did that tried to do that so many times in like Australia Elite, but it was just so hard for me. I don't know, so hard.
Fair enough. I had no clue what just happened there, but hopefully that answers your question.
Yeah, like just tune out if you don't understand.
I wanted to ask like how you overcame mental blocks, and how has that translated into maybe your life now if you do experience mental blocks with maybe not gymnastics or anything, but maybe work or social life or even studies as well.
I think like mental blocks are super interesting because they often don't really have anything to do with what you're actually getting a mental block for. Like I never really got mental blocks within gymnastics. Like I was always somebody who would just like chuck skills and like really just try things. But I mean, I saw a lot of people have mental blocks, but then after I came back from Worlds, I was just like very drained and obviously like was in a bit of mental like turmoil with what I was doing, and like the time when I developed the mental block was when I was like so stressed about exams and this Worlds thing. So it had everything to do with that and nothing to do with the actual skill. So if you are maybe experiencing a mental block, it might not have anything to do with like the skill or like what you're trying to do. So maybe just like reflecting or having a think about what else is going on for you might be helpful. I worked a bit with like a sports psychologist, really just like, I mean, when you get a mental block, it's usually like a lot of racing kind of thoughts and like it's not, you're not having like a clear kind of,
something that you would normally be able to do.
Yeah, pretty much. So I like worked with the sports psychologist a bit on like just like being present in the moment and like doing a lot of grounding and try not to like, because like your body, like it knows what to do. Like you don't really have to tell it, especially when I've been doing like that skill or like gymnastics for such a long time. Like I don't have to tell it what to do. It just knows. And it's really just getting out of your own way in your head, like not overcomplicating things, just like, yeah, okay, this is what I'm doing. Like, you know, maybe having a few like keywords or key things that you might say just to like cue up the muscles or the movement. But most of the time, if you're doing something well, like you would want to be in that sort of like flow state where you don't have to think too much.
Yeah, 100%. Did you have any certain routines or anything that you followed? You talked about like keywords or cues that maybe coaches gave you or something that helps calm you down. I guess, especially the college lifestyle, I feel like you might have music in the background or people cheering you on, or I don't know, people like to do the slow clap and then build up into you know, like a finale, those sorts of things. Did you have any of those routines or things that you wanted the crowd to do, or maybe people to play music or anything?
Yeah, I think, I mean, most of the time, like when I was competing, like I sort of just like was in my own zone. So I wouldn't even know if like what the crowd was doing. If I'm doing a good job, I shouldn't know what they're doing. Like if I'm just, because the thing is, you want to simulate your training environment in a competition. Like there's obviously going to be all these other distractions, the nerves, like all of this stuff. But you just want, you've done it like 1,000 times. You know, you just want to go back to like what you know. So for me, like before we would start competing, like I would listen to music in my headphones, like do a lot of visualization and like mental imagery of my routines. And then right before I was competing, like I was just kind of like saying keywords and like, you know, doing some bit of breathing and just like kind of just calming myself down in my head a lot. Like I like to do a lot of talking to myself.
Which is fine.
Yeah.
Which is okay. We love talking to ourselves.
And then when I was actually doing the routine, I would have certain words and things that I would say just to like, it would just be like, you know, straight or like push through or down or like arms or I don't know, just like little words like that, just so that there was, and I would do that in training as well. So every time I did a routine, I'd have the same things going on in my head, and then just the outside stuff is different. Yeah. And I think that's the aim.
Yeah, exactly. It's a lot easier said than done.
Yeah, well, exactly.
Yeah, because distractions and you think of footy players and you're like, oh my God, you get paid to do this so much, but literally there's 50,000 people screaming at you, or in your instance maybe a big crowd or the opposition school like yelling at you and stuff. How hard is it to block out?
I think because there's a lot of downtime in gymnastics, like, you know, you're waiting for your other teammates to do their routine. Like if you're like, so there's 6 people who compete. If you're the 6th person, then you've got like, you know, 20 minutes where you're just like having to either decide to like be focused for the whole time, or you kind of, you know, switch off and you like dance around with your teammates and you like kind of get the energy from the crowd. And then maybe when there's 5 minutes to go, then you like switch into your zone. Like it really depends on like what works best for you. I think for different events, I had a different sort of strategy. Like for floor and vault, I'd be happy to just like be messing around for a while. And then when it was, you know, 2 people before me, I'd be like, okay, get into your zone. But then on beam and bars, I would be like, no, I need to be in my zone the whole time. So, you know, you can, you know, interact with the crowd. You can see those distractions, but then when you're actually there, like on the beam, like you're not even hearing anybody kind of thing.
Amazing.
Yeah.
What's next for you?
Well,
you finally got in.
I know. I'm doing a clinical psychology master's program, so that's cool. Yeah, I guess that's going to be a pretty intense, like 2 years. I'll have placements and hope to like learn a lot of stuff and just try and it's more, you know, practice based. So I'll be doing not as much coursework and focus on grades. Like I'll get to write a thesis, do some research, and then also do all the practice. So it's going to be a big 2 years. But I'm really excited. Amazing.
I actually wanted to ask, like, what's the best experience you've had so far in terms of your volunteering and everything? Because I can imagine how rewarding volunteering would be, and hearing the certain stories that you might hear. What's been the most rewarding thing that's kept you driven towards your clinical psychology sort of?
Yeah, I mean, working on, so it's like helpline type stuff. So, and then like a lot of like information and referral based type of thing. So I hear a lot. It is quite draining sometimes, being on the other end of the phone to people who are, you know, quite heightened, distressed state, and they're sort of like telling you about what's going on for them, and it's hard to listen to, particularly with the eating disorders, where I like know how difficult it can be. It's like there's a lot of parents calling in, you know, saying I'm worried about my daughter, my son, my kid who's doing this, like, and it's hard to hear, but I think a lot of people just like want to like somebody to listen to them, and then to also like point them in the right direction, and it is really rewarding. Like I don't have a specific example at the moment, but it's really rewarding when, like, sometimes I'm like, oh, you know, I'm just a volunteer here, so it's not my expertise in this area, but I can refer you on to somebody else, and the person on the other end of the line is like, oh, like you've done, like, oh, that's okay, like you've done an amazing job, like you've made me feel so much better, like already, like thank you. Like just when you can feel like the weight's lifted off their shoulders a little bit, and you can feel them relax, and like that they've got something off their chest, and then they sort of say, thanks for that. Like you did do actually a good job. When I'm sitting there going, oh, I can't really do very much for you.
And like that imposter syndrome as well. And sometimes people honestly just need a shoulder to lean on, or a set of ears to, I guess, vent to.
Yeah.
Which is amazing that you're doing the volunteer work, and you should be very proud of yourself.
Yeah, I mean, I do really enjoy it. Like, it's been really, really good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Amazing. So a bit more volunteering, or a bit more like practical in the field sort of thing.
Yeah. I'll still have my volunteering roles for the next 6 months to a year. Like that's sort of the contract, but I want to continue them anyway. But then a lot more practical things like at my placements.
Yes, amazing. I'm very excited, and I appreciate you a lot for coming back, the listeners for coming on and hopping on the podcast. Thank you very much for the chat.
Thanks, Jaden. It was great.
Be sure to follow at Life with Them podcast on Instagram, and I'm sure you can find Maddi's links all in the show notes below. But hope you enjoyed, and see you in the next episode.
Thanks.
Bye-bye.